Chapter 4. The territory of Squirrelking, Araltum and Idga Drayqueen consisted of a sizable grove of beech, hazelnut and various conifers that grew near the cliff tops and shoreline, some 2 leagues south of Salamanderstron. It was not far from where Walt and Jem had found Ascor's wrecked boat. Araltum was a fat, pompous and vain creature whose title, King, was one of his own making. He had also conferred the name Drayqueen on his haughty and ill-mannered wife Idga. They were indeed a well-matched pair. It was some 12 seasons since they had arrived and had enforced their authority over the tree groves. Araltum did this by hiring mercenary squirrel warriors, travelling, poor-loose fighters who pledged their swords in exchange for position and the benefits of life amid the fertile groves of fruit and nut trees which abounded in the Squirrelking's domain. It was no mean achievement for the royal couple to have established their rule. Their home and court was in the terraces at the centre of the groves. Araltum and Idga revelled in the setting of petty ceremonies, laws, acts and penalties, which were rigidly enforced by their officers. One morning, Idga Drayqueen awoke to witness the arrival of spring, a welcome event after the harsh, dark days of winter. The last snows melted and slid from bended boughs under a warm, beaming sun. Birdsong echoed through the trees, backed by the rippling music of streams free from their icy covers. The earth was renewing itself once more. With the new season came the initiation of a new ceremony, the marking of the marches. This was something which Araltum and Idga had planned throughout the tedious days and evenings of wintertide. It was to be a grand parade of the royal couple's boundaries, starting at the court, then spreading forth to circle the groves which marked their lands, and culminating back at the court with a grand feast. The entire affair would be punctuated with music, song, and many high-flown speeches which the Squirrel King and his Drayqueen had written for themselves. This was designed to impress upon their subjects the power and magnificence of the royal pair. Idga and her servants had spent long winter nights making a banner, a large, florid thing, truly a triumphal set-piece. It was yellow with blue chevrons on one side to denote the sea. 6 green trees represented the land at the other side. Its centre was dominated by 2 huge, bushy tails, the symbols of king and queen. At the opening of the new ceremony, the royal banner, which was now fixed to a long flagstaff made of yew wood, was presented to Araltum by Idga. Amid cheers and jubilant chants from the rank-and-file squirrels, Idga performed an elaborate curtsy and fell flat on her considerable rear end. A playful gust of wind caught the banner, causing Araltum to stagger about and to nearly be swept off his paws. Driltig and Chamok, 2 of his captains, saved the king from injury by taking charge of the billowing flag. As Idga was helped up by her servants, Araltum launched squeakily into his speech.
Let all who see this our royal standard show and bow their heads and wave their tails in respect. Yes, wherever our banner flies, it will inspire joy in the hearts of all.
Dutiful cheers echoed forth from the onlookers as the king continued.
And strike terror into the hearts of foul beasts who are rash enough to trespass upon these my territories.
More orchestrated calls of approval rang out among the crowd before Araltum concluded his speech.
This flag shall fly 100,000 seasons as a symbol of my power. Let all beasts know of the beauty and the wisdom of Idga Drayqueen and her king, the fearless, the mighty, the magnificent.
Here he raised his paws as his subjects shouted en masse, "Long live Idga Drayqueen and Squirrel King Araltum." The procession wound off through the trees, Araltum swaggering in the lead, Chamog and Driltig slightly behind, bearing the new royal standard, and 6 other various captains and officials following. In their wake marched a score of singers and musicians, trilling the praises of their rulers in a song jointly composed by the royal couple. O mighty and magnificent, upholders of our laws, thy loyal subjects call to thee, protect us with thy paws. O Araltum and thy Drayqueen, so fair of fur and hail, we bow to thee in honour and joyfully cry hail. A huge ancient chestnut tree, which held the court within its spreading limbs, had a small barred door set in the base of its trunk. This was the cell which held dissidents and malefactors. Doogy Doogy Plumm peered through the tiny barred aperture and laughed. Then, in his strong Northern Highland accent, he shouted out, "Ho, ho, ho! Will you listen to the dunderheads? Chanting and singing to that wee lad Burl." Doogy, a short, thick-bodied squirrel, was no lightweight himself. He turned to his fellow prisoner, a tall, powerful, sinewy-built beast. "Oh, Tam, my beauty, don't you wish we were out there having such a broad time caterwauling the odd his praises? Will you be grieved to miss the brophies for their majesties?" Rakkety Tam MacBurl unfolded himself from a small bunk and stretched lazily. "Nay, Doogie, I'd sooner miss a dozen feasts than have to bound scrape around that little toad, singing foolish ditties that him and Idga pen between them." Tam's accent was not as broad as Doogie's. He was a borderer, not from the Highlands. Doogie scrambled down from the stool he had been perched on and threw himself on the bunk. "Ah, Tam, why do you ever roam south to pledge our blades to such a pair of fools?" Tam laughed dryly. "Because it seemed a good idea at the time, wee Doogy Plumm. You have to take the bad with the good." Doogie scratched his tail. "Aye, and there hasn't been much of that good lately." Tam rattled the cell door to attract the attention of the guard who was posted outside. "Hey, Injo, when you going to let us out here? We're famished for a want of food." Injo had served with both Tam and Doogie and was friendly toward them. He shrugged apologetically. "Sorry, Tam, I've got me orders, but if you've got to stay in there until the ceremony and the feast are finished, then I'm off to march you up to the court where the royal pair will decide what punishment fit your crimes." Rakkety Tam's face was the picture of roguish innocence. "Who, me? What crime am I supposed to have committed?" The guard shook his head, chuckling. "You're an insubordinate rascal, Captain MacBurl. What did you think Araltum was going to do after you called him a waddling old windbag and refused to carry the royal flag in his new ceremony? Tam, you're the best warrior the king's ever had, but you can't insult him like that and get off free." Doogie scrambled back up onto the stool next to Tam. "I never said heard about the blithering oaf." Injo guffawed loudly. "Of course you didn't, Doogie, but you did call Idga Drayqueen a fussy-bustled old branch-buster. I think that might have had something to do with you being in there, eh?" Doogie Plumm wrinkled his nose. "Ach, but we was only seeing what every beast was thinking." Injo leaned on his spear as he explained to Doogie. "Aye, but no matter what every beast is thinking, they keep it to themselves. You two are the first to say it out loud. Why don't you go and take another nap? When all the celebrations are done with, you'll be sent for. Take my word for it, mates. I've got my orders." Further argument was useless. Tam and Doogie lay heads to paws on the little bunk and tried to slumber, each with his own thoughts. Both beasts had left the Northlands to come south in the winter of the famine. Starvation or death by bands of predatory vermin killed off many squirrels that winter. Neither Tam nor Doogie had any close family, but both were young warriors with a sense of adventure. They'd met up on the road whilst trekking south through warmer climes. Straight away they'd taken to each other and had become the closest of comrades. Together the two squirrels had lived through a series of perils and scrapes, but had come through it all, still side by side. Tam and Doogie had been spotted by Araltum's scouts as soon as they had walked into his territory. The Squirrelking immediately knew that these two young warriors were the best he had ever seen. Initially, Tam and Doogie had been flattered by the cordial welcome and the attention lavished upon them by the royal couple. In Araltum's kingdom were rich and fertile copses and glades, food grown in abundance everywhere, and a balmy coastline climate for most seasons. A whole different world compared to the hard life of the Northlands from whence Tam and Doogie had come. Soon the two companions had pledged their word and swords in the Squirrel King's service. Both had risen swiftly in the ranks, Tam being made royal champion, with the faithful Doogie always at his friend's side. Having fiercely repulsed any foe beast who attacked, soon there were few large vermin raids of any kind. After a while, the names Rakkety Tam MacBurl and Wild Doogy Plumm had become bywords for courage and fearlessness. With the passing of seasons, Araltum's land became safe and secure, no longer a satisfying place for active warriors. Tam and Doogie, still young and wild, became disenchanted with having to enforce the trivial and oft-times piffling petty regulations made by Araltum and Idga. The day before, the new ceremony brought things to a head. Now they were imprisoned by the same laws that they had upheld. Things would never again be the same between Tam, Doogy and the royal squirrel rulers. Tam and Doogy whiled away the hours, dozing fitfully. At mid-noon, Hinjo tapped on the door. Doogy sat up, rubbing both eyes with his tail brush. "What's going on out there? Can you not let a body take a wee rest? Away with ye!" This time the spearbutt rapped the door sharply. Hinjo's voice was loud and urgent. "Come quick! Idga Drayqueen wants to see you both. Something's gone badly wrong. I don't know what 'tis, but you're both to follow me at the double." Rising unhurriedly, Tam began wrapping on his woven heather tartan of brown, green and dusty lilac, first round his waist in a kilt, and then across his chest and over one shoulder, so it draped down, cloak-like, upon his back. He winked roguishly at Doogy, who was also dressing. "Idga wants to see us, that's nice. Wonder if she served us some cake and wine. Dearie me, we can't dash up there looking like a pair of ragamuffins, Doogy." Hinjo unbolted the door and opened it hastily. "Well, you two put a move on. You need it urgent, now." Doogy Plumm was setting a small eagle feather in his cap. He spat on one paw and preened his tail slowly. "Och, the poor wee queenie. Tell her we drop by to chat and with her as soon as we're dulking bra and saucy." Hinjo pleaded. "Come on, mates. Please, or she'll have my hide. Tam, will you move yourself?" Tam cinched his broad belt tight and set his cap at a jaunty angle. "So then, Doogy, my friend, do you think we look fit enough for to be presented to Her Majesty?" His companion drew up a smart tail slit. "Aye, like a pair of lassies ready to dance a reel, sir." Rakkety Tam bowed gallantly to Doogy. "After you, sir. Quick march, left, right, tails up, shoulders back, eyes front." They marched out in perfect step, leaping together up into the big old chestnut trunk. A wide platform of limbs and boughs connected the chestnut with several large trees nearby. This formed the royal court, which at that moment was in a state of chaos. King Araltum was wrapped in a blanket, dishevelled, shivering and wailing. Idga Drayqueen had gone into a swoon, lying flat on her back and gasping for breath. Several of her servants were fanning her with ferns and dabbing her paws with rose water. Squirrels were running hither and thither, some hiding, others gathering up their belongings. Tam marched straight up to Araltum, questioning him sharply. "What in the name of Season's been going on here?" Regardless of not being addressed by his title, the king sobbed. I was attacked, invaded, assaulted. Barbarians, hooligans, monsters. They've stolen our royal banner." The courtiers and servants set up a concerted mourn. Doogy roared at them. "Well, you shut that wailing up." Idga Drayqueen raised a tear-stained face, blubbering.
You and me, poor love, what have these murderers done to you? We'll all be slain in our beds. You.
Tam turned on her contemptuously. "Silence, ma'am, and try to behave like a queen. Your husband's alive and well." "Well, did all this happen, Drilltig?" Nursing her bruised paw, Captain Drilltig muttered brokenly. "Down at the west fringe, near the cliff tops." Tam nodded to Doogy. "Get down there fast, mate, see what's going on, then report back to me." Doogy took off like an arrow, zinging through the foliage. Turning his attention to the trembling king, Tam tried to make sense of all that was going on. "Tell me what you can. What did you see?" Araltum blurted out squeakishly.
There were hundreds of them, white vermin. They surrounded us, and then that thing, that Gulo, attacked without warning. I was almost killed. Do you hear me? Almost killed."
Araltum collapsed, weeping hysterically. Tam gave an irate snort. Grabbing hold of Drilltig, he hauled him upright. "Make your report, Captain. Come on, smarten up." Drilltig could not meet his interrogator's gaze. He rubbed his bruised paw, babbling like a beast in a trance. "It was a nightmare. One moment we were marching out the trees onto the western fringe. Me and Shamrock were carrying the flag. The others were singing and playing flutes. Suddenly they ambushed us. Out of nowhere, a great mob of wild vermin, white foxes and ermine storks. The leader was called Gulo. They were yelling his name, Gulo. They hit us like lightning, ripping, slaying and slashing. We never stood a chance. I dropped the flag, and me and Pine Tooth over there, we seized the king and rushed him up into the trees. That's when I hurt my paw. It went like the wind, our creatures screaming and dying back there. We could hear those vermin roaring and laughing like mad beasts. I'll never forget it as long as I live. Never." Drilltig slumped down, weeping. The older squirrel, Pine Tooth, was an experienced campaigner. He sat silent, ignoring a bleeding wound to his shoulder. Tam looked to him. Pine Tooth shook his head. "I can't tell you any more needed, Tam. It's all happened too fast. Tam nodded. You'd best get that wound seen to, mate. Pinetooth glanced at his injury as if just noticing it. One of the vermin slashed me with a blade shaped like a sickle. I was lucky though. I escaped. That Gulo beast got Captain Jamlock first. Poor beast, he screamed like a babe. Idga Drayqueen had sufficiently recovered to complain at Tam.
My poor Araltum, almost killed. And where were you while all this murder was taking place, eh?
Rakkety Tam lost his temper and bellowed at her. Locked in the guardhouse because I couldn't play your stupid little games. Don't you remember? Where's me and Doogie's weapons of war? You had them confiscated. Pinetooth went to a concealed place amid the branches. He dragged forth a big sack with its neck tied shut. Tearing it open with his teeth, he upended it. Tam grabbed the belongings that had been taken from him, his trusty weapon, a claymore with a hefty double-edged blade and a basket hilt, his dirk, the long dagger used by northerners for close fighting, and his scian-dhu, a small, keen skinning knife with a black handle and an amber cairnstone set on top. Tam thrust the claymore into the side of his belt, the dirk at the back beneath his cloak, and the scian-dhu behind a hackle of feathers set into his cap. Last he picked up his buckler, a small round fighting shield, slinging it behind his left shoulder. Now I feel properly dressed. I'll hold Doogie's care here until he gets back. It was some time before Tam's partner returned. Buckling on his 3 blades and picking up his shield, Doogie spoke quietly to Tam. I tell you, mate, it was a massacre. Tam showed no emotion. Were there no wounded on either side? Did you not catch a sight of the vermin? Doogie shook his head. Nary a sign of them, but they left tracks aplenty. There's no one of our fighters alive. Tam pointed at Idga and Araltum. Doogie, you and the rest bring these 2 along. 'Twill do them good to see the results of their play acting. 'Tis safe enough to return there now. I'll go ahead and look at the vermin tracks while they're still fresh. As Tam swung off through the trees, Araltum protested.
You can't talk to me like that. I'm a king.
Doogie dragged Araltum up, whipping the blanket off him. You're not but a blithering old bloater. Get moving. Idga Drayqueen called out indignantly.
You common little beast. I'll have you thrown back in the guardhouse for your impudence. Guards, seize him.
As no beast moved to hinder him, Doogie scowled fiercely at Idga. I no want to hear another word out of you. Now move that fat tail, you wee biddy, or I'll move it for you.